welcome back to Rocky Mountain Prepper. I'm Bellum. Today we are continuing our Strong Foundation series, where we are reading through the Bible. Before we begin with that, I have done a ton of research, and all my research has pointed to centered around the pharaohs of Egypt, and I have come to the conclusion, at least in my own mind, that Amenhotep III was the pharaoh that promoted Joseph from slave to the chief administrator of all Egypt. Now, during his time, Egypt became very wealthy, but not through war and conquest, but through trade. That actually makes a lot of sense if you, that'll make a lot more sense once we get into the chapters today. In fact, he is the only pharaoh who gained considerable wealth through trade. And during his reign, the Egyptian people dug a giant reservoir and a massive canal connecting to the Nile. Now, this was done because of the famine itself. Now, normally we think of famines as caused by drought. This famine was a little different than we're used to, because the famine in Joseph's time, there are records from Egypt that it was caused by too much water. During the reign of Amenhotep III, 2 forts were built along the Nile towards the edge of the southern kingdom. They built these for defense, but they also kept records in there. Records of how much water was coming down the Nile during the floods. Now, every spring, the Nile floods. When it does, it brings in a massive amount of water and silt. The silt is very fertile. The records show that for 7 years, there was, in fact, higher than average flooding, but not badly. This actually helped Egypt. It opened up more desert to be able to farm, because more water in it and more silt, giving them bumper crops. After those 7 years, there was 7 more years of insane amounts of water, so high that you could not even get into the fields to plow and to plant, because you can't plant if the fields are too wet. We've seen this now with the flooding in the United States. There are still fields that could not be planted this year in 2019. So that actually caused Egypt to not be able to plant. At the same time, there's a little bit of evidence all over the place showing that everywhere else dried out because of a slight climate shift. I'm not going to get into global warming, global cooling, any of those debates, but the climate has repercussions. If it shifts one direction or another, it can cause problems. You can even look back to the 1930s. There was a massive drought here in the United States. That caused almost a famine. We had food stores to protect us from it. Barely. But it was a similar situation. Slight climate shift caused problems. So part of the way that Joseph and his Pharaoh solved the problem was by digging this canal, which drained roughly half the floodwaters of the Nile, and kind of metered it out so that it would slowly drain back out, so that the Nile stayed high a little longer. The canal was such a big achievement for the Pharaoh that Amenhotep III actually put his pyramid right alongside of it. He was that proud of it. Now, that didn't solve the problem entirely. That just lessened the issue a little. But that canal, translated from Arabic, which was translated out of Egyptian, is known, in English, it's known as the Canal of Joseph. So, there is archaeological evidence to support Joseph being a very big man in Egypt. Most Egyptians don't like to look at it that way because, well, that means that the Jews helped them, I guess. I don't know. Okay, so last we left off, Joseph was made chief administrator. He was given a wife who did bear him 2 sons. And then the famine began. And as soon as the famine began, Pharaoh told the people to go to Joseph. And he opened the storehouses and started selling. Now, one thing with these storehouses that we have found through archaeology is you could go, once you went in, there was only one way to go. You had to first stop at, there was a little niche where a person behind a desk, like I'm behind right now, could sit. And you'd pay him the money. He'd more than likely, he gave you a bag, a sack. And then you continued down a slope to the far end. Now, these silos were engineered beautifully so that as one emptied, the others would refill it. And it was only wide enough for one person to come through at a time. There would be a long single file line going back. Think of the DMV, but for food. Yeah, it would have been a nightmare to us. But you take your sack, well, you pay for your grain, go down the hall, and you hand your sack to someone standing at where they fill it, and they put the sack in place, open up the chamber, and grain fills the sack. They close it, hand you back your sack, and you go out through the exit. There's no way to go back unless you go around. They did this to actually keep things orderly. And it looks to me like they would have had a guard next to the door, just in case. Probably more guards outside, so that if there's any problems, they can be taken care of quickly. Alright, so Now, we're in Genesis 42. So if you'll please open up your Bibles and read along with me. Never just trust my word. I'm a human. I'm perfectly fallible. As Bear from Bear Independent keeps saying, I am a broken vessel. Don't trust me. Open your Bible and read it yourself. Don't just farm it out to me, please. Follow along. Leave comments, please. I would be more than happy to answer any questions or comments. I'll do it to the best of my ability. If I can't figure it out, if I don't know, I will let you know that I don't know, and I will get back to you with the information when I figure it out or find it out. I have plenty of resources to look for, and so I can help you out that way. But please, read yourself. See what God's Word says for yourself. Okay. Genesis 42. And when Jacob saw that there was grain in Mitzrayim, Jacob said to his sons, Why do you look at each other? And he said, See, I have heard that there is grain in Mitzrayim. Go down to that place and buy for us there, and let us live and not die. Basically, Jacob's sons were looking concerned. And he just said, Hey, why do you look at each other? You guys don't know what to do. I've heard that they have food down in Egypt. Go on down and see if you can't buy any. And Joseph's 10 brothers went down to buy grain in Mitzrayim. But Jacob did not send Joseph's brother Benjamin with his brothers, for he said, Lest some harm come to him. And the sons of Israel went to buy grain among those who journeyed, for the scarcity of food was in the land of Canaan. Basically, they jumped into a big convoy or a caravan. And Joseph was the governor over the land, and he was the one who sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brothers came and bowed down before him with their faces to the earth. And Joseph saw his brothers and recognized them. But he acted as a stranger to them, and spoke to them harshly, and said to them, Where do you come from? And they said, From the land of Canaan, to buy food. So Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. And Joseph remembered the dreams which he had dreamed about them, and said to them, You are spies. You have come to see the nakedness of the land. He's basically testing them to see the character of the men that they have become. Partially because he knew what they were when he left, or was taken from them. And they said to him, No, my master, but your servants have come to buy food. We are all one man's sons. We are trustworthy. Your servants are not spies. But he said to them, No, but you have come to see the nakedness of the land. When he says nakedness of the land, he's basically meaning the condition of Egypt. So they could see, because some spies would come to see how strong the land is. Would it be worth sending troops to go take Egypt? That's what he's accusing them of. And they said, your servants are 12 brothers, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And see, the youngest is with our father today, and one is no more. And Joseph said to them, it is as I spoke to you, saying, you are spies. But by this you shall be proven. By the life of Pharaoh, you do not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of you, and let him bring your brother while you are kept in prison. So let your words be proven to see whether there is any truth in you, or else by the life of Pharaoh you are spies. And he put them all together in prison for 3 days. Now Joseph said to them the third day, on the third day, do this and live, for I fear Elohim. If you are trustworthy, let one of your brothers be confined to your prison house. And you go, bring again for the scarcity of food of your houses. And bring your youngest brother to me, and let your words be confirmed, and do not lie. And so they did. And they said to each other, truly we are guilty concerning our brother, for we saw the distress of his life when he pleaded with us, yet we did not listen. That is why this distress has come upon us. And Reuben answered them, saying, did I not speak to you, saying, do not sin against the boy? And you would not listen. And see, his blood is now required of us. Basically, they're feeling really guilty for Joseph. And they did not know that Joseph understood them, for he spoke to them through an interpreter. Basically, one of his household members had been taught Hebrew to that person, so he probably figured one day my family's probably going to come down, because I've heard that it's bad up there, so if I need to, I'll speak through this member of my household, one of my servants, and he can talk to them. He'll just say exactly what I tell him to say, and they won't have a clue. I think he's not only testing them, but kind of having a little bit of fun with them. I mean, I know you and I probably would relish the idea of doing that to someone who's really messed with us. Just really getting them to, really putting the fear of God into them. And he turned himself away from them and wept, but came back to them and spoke to them. And he took Simeon from them and bound him before their eyes. And Joseph commanded, and they filled their sacks with grain, also to put every man's silver to his sack, and to give them food for the journey. And thus it was done for them. Basically, Joseph is taking care of his family. Yeah, they hurt him, they were nasty to him, but they're still family. He's still taking care of them. This is actually how we are supposed to act. I don't care what you did to me. I'm going to make sure you're all right. Here, have some food. He had his men fill the grain, put the money back. So they loaded their donkeys with the grain and went from there. And as one of them opened his sack to give his donkey fodder at the lodging place, he saw his silver, for it was in the mouth of his sack. And he said to his brothers, "My silver has been returned, and there it is in my sack." And their hearts sank, and they were afraid, saying to each other, "What is this that Elohim has done to us?" So they came to Jacob their father, in the land of Canaan, and reported to him all that befell them, saying, "The man, the master of the land, spoke to us harshly, and took us for spies of the land. But we said to him, We are trustworthy, we are not spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of our father. One is no more, and the youngest is today with our father in the land of Canaan." And the man, the master of the land, said to us, "By this I know that you are trustworthy. Leave one of your brothers here with me, and take food for the scarcity of food of your households, and go. And bring your youngest brother to me. Then I know that you are not spies, but that you are trustworthy. I give your brother to you, and you move about in the land." Basically, bring your youngest brother back, and you can come and go as you please. And it came to be, as they emptied their sacks, that, look, the bundle of each man's silver was in his sack. And when they and their father saw the bundles of silver, they were afraid. And Jacob their father said to them, "You have bereaved me. Joseph is no more, and Simeon is no more, and you would take Benjamin. All this is against me." So Reuben spoke to his father, saying, "Take the lives of my 2 sons. If I do not bring him back to you, put him in my hands, and I myself bring him back to you." But he said, "My son is not going down with you, for his brother is dead, and if he is left alone, and if any harm should come to him along the way in which you go, then you would bring down my gray hair with sorrow to Sheol." Basically saying, if something happened to Benjamin, it would kill me. But the scarcity of food was severe in the land, and it came to be, when they had eaten up the grain which they had brought from Mitzrayim, that their father said to them, "Go back, buy us a little food." But Judah spoke to him, saying, "The man vehemently warned us, saying, You do not see my face unless your brother is with you. If you let your brother if you let our brother go with us, we go down and buy food. But if you do not let him go, we do not go down." But the man said to us, "You do not see my face unless your brother is with you." And Israel said, "Why do you do evil to me to inform me the man you still had another brother?" And they said, "The man kept asking about us and our relatives, saying, 'Is your father still alive? Have you another brother?' And we informed him according to these words. How could we know that he would say, "Bring your brother down." And Judah said to Israel his father, "Send the boy with me, and let us arise and go, and live and not die, both we and you, and also our little ones. I myself shall guarantee for him from my hand. You are to require him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, then let me bear the blame forever. For if we had not delayed truly, by now we could have returned this second time." That's actually a better way of offering to someone to, instead of saying, "Hey, you can have my kids, my 2 children if something happens to him." That's kind of selfish. That's saying, hey, because honestly, a guy can always have more children. But to say, "I will bear the blame myself if something happens to him," that's actually a lot less selfish. That's more honorable, at least in my eyes. And their father Israel said to them, "If so, then do this. Take some of the best fruit of the land in your vessels, and bring a present down for the man, a little balm and a little honey, spices and myrrh, nuts and almonds. And take double silver in your hand, and take back in your hand the silver that was returned in the mouth of your sacks." It could have been a mistake. On that note, I don't think it... Well, that's just showing that Jacob didn't know how it was set up. But there's no way it could have been a mistake the way these granaries were set up. And they were roughly temporary granaries. It wasn't built to last forever. But the way it was set up, there could have been no mistake. And the brothers who went down would have known that. But he's not going to argue that point with them, with their father. He probably is thinking, okay, we go down with the extra silver, we can even buy more. If it wasn't a mistake. If they meant for us to keep the money, fine. We'll buy even more this time. And then we don't have to go back as soon. And take your brother, and arise, go back to the man. And El Shaddai give you compassion before the man, so that he shall release your brother and Benjamin. And if I am bereaved, I am bereaved. Basically, go, may God bless your journey so that you can bring back, so that all of you can come back together. And I'll just have to bear this on my own. I'll just have to be incredibly sad about this myself. Basically, because not having Benjamin there. And the men took that present and Benjamin, and they took double the amount of silver in their hand, and arose and went down to Mitzrayim and stood before Joseph. And Joseph saw Benjamin with them, and said to the one over his house, "Bring the men home, and make a great slaughter, and prepare, for these men are to eat with me at noon." And the man did as Joseph said. And the man brought the men to Joseph's house. And the men were afraid, because they were brought to Joseph's house, and they said, "Is it because of the silver which was put back in our sacks the first time that we uh, are brought in, to throw himself upon us and to fall upon us, to take us as slaves, our donkeys too. Basically that's saying, okay, is he going to imprison us or make us all slaves because of that silver? And take our animals, everything that we have? So they're basically peeing their pants right now. I know I'd be terrified. I don't know any person that wouldn't be. I was military. I can handle myself. But I don't know, if I'm brought into a situation like that, I don't know what's going on. I don't know how many men. I know I can't take a certain number of people with me. Over a certain number, I know that if I'm stuck in a house, I'm dead. They're thinking the same thing. I mean, they've all been trained. It was tradition from Abraham. Everyone was a warrior. But they don't know how many could be there. In fact, it only took 2 of them to wipe out a whole town. But they don't know what they're facing. It's not a good situation for them. So they came near to the man over the house of Joseph, and spoke to him at the door of the house, and said, O my master, we indeed came down the first time to buy food. But it came to be, when we came to the lodging place, that we opened our sacks and saw each man's silver in the mouth of his sack, our silver in its weight, and we have brought it back in our hand. And we have brought down other silver in our hand to buy food. We do not know who put the silver in our sacks. But he said, Peace be with you. Do not be afraid. Your Elohim and the Elohim of your father has given you treasure in your sacks. Your silver had come to me, and he brought Simeon out to them. Basically, he's saying it's a blessing from your God. It's a blessing from God Almighty. Don't worry about it. Calm down. I know what happened. I know how it came down. Don't worry. And the man brought the men into Joseph's house and gave them water, and they washed their feet. And he gave their donkeys fodder. Basically, he's taking care of them. Israelite tradition, whenever you came into a house, before you eat, you would wash your feet and your hands. They're doing this. And the master of Joseph's house, the person directly under Joseph in charge of the house, even fed the donkeys for him. And they made their present ready for Joseph's coming at noon, for they heard that they were to eat there. And when Joseph came home, they brought him the present which was in their hand into the house, and bowed down before him to the earth. And he asked them about their welfare, and said, Is your father well? The old man of whom you spoke, is he still alive? And they said, Your servant our father is in good health. He is still alive. And they bowed their heads down and did obedience. And they lifted their eyes and saw, and he lifted his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, Is this your youngest brother of whom you spoke to me? And he said, Elohim show favor on you, my son. And Joseph hurried, for his emotions were deeply moved towards his brother, and he looked for a place to weep, and went into his room and wept there. Well, that's understandable. I mean, he hadn't seen his brother in quite a few years. I mean, Benjamin would have been barely 2, maybe? Now he's almost a full-grown man. This was many years, and it was just too overwhelming. I would have cried too. Just saying. When he washed his face and came out and controlled himself and said, then he washed his face and came out and controlled himself and said, "Serve the food." And they sat him in a place by himself, and them by themselves, and the Mitzrayites who ate with them by themselves. For the Mitzrayites could not eat food with the Hebrews, for that is an abomination to the Mitzrayites. It's basically custom in Egypt that you don't eat with foreigners. I don't like it. I'll eat with anybody. We'll strike up a good conversation and we'll find something in common. But it's their tradition. It still is their tradition for the most part. And they sat before him, the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth. And the men looked at each other in astonishment. Basically, they were set oldest to youngest. And the brothers couldn't figure out how he knew. And he took portions to them from before him. But Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as any of theirs. And they feasted and they drank with him. 44. And he commanded the one over his house, saying, "Fill the men's sacks with food, as they are able to bear, and put each man's silver in the mouth of his sack. And put my cup, the silver cup, in the mouth of the sack of the youngest, and the silver for his grain." And he did according to the words of Joseph which he spoke. As soon as the morning was light, the men were sent away, and they and their donkeys. And when they had gone out of the city, not having gone far, Joseph said to the one over his house, "Rise up, follow the men, and when you overtake them, say to them, 'Why have you repaid evil for good? Is this not the one from which my master drinks, and with which he indeed divines? You have done evil in what you have done." Basically, he set him up in order to test him. Again, he wants to make sure that they are the good men that he hoped that they had become. So he overtook them and spoke these words to them. And they said to him, "Why does my master say these words? Far be it from us that your servant should do according to this word. See, we brought back to you from the land of Canaan the silver which we found in the mouths of our sacks. How then should we steal silver or gold from your master's house. With whoever your with whomever of your servants it is found, he shall die, and we shall become my master's slaves as well. And he said, now also let it be according to your words. He with whom it is found becomes my slave, and you are innocent. And they hurried, each man let down his sack to the ground, and each opened his sack. And he searched with the oldest first, and with the youngest last, and the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. And they tore their garments, and each man loaded his donkey and went back to the city. And Joseph and his brothers, and Judah and his brothers, came to Joseph's house, and he was still there, and they fell before him on the ground. And Joseph said to them, what deed is this you have done? Did you not know that a man like me indeed divines? Didn't you know that I have supernatural powers? I can see things that no one else can. And Judah said, what do we do? What do we say to my master? What do we speak? How do we clear ourselves? Elohim has found out the crookedness of our servant. See, we are my master's slaves, both we and he, also with whom the cup was found. But he said, far be it from me to do this. The man in whose hand the cup was found, he becomes my slave, and you go in peace to your father. And Judah came near to him and said, O my master, please let your servant speak a word in my master's hearing, and do not let your displeasure burn against your servant, for you are like Pharaoh. My master asks his servant, saying, have you a father or a brother? And we said to my master, we have a father, an old man, and a young child of his old age. And his brother is dead, and he alone is left of his mother's children. And his father loves him. And you said to your servant, bring him down to me, and let me set my eyes on him. And we said to my master, the boy is not able to leave his father, for if he leaves his father shall die. But you said to your servant, unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you do not see my face again. And it came to be, when we went to your servant my father, that we told him the words of my master, and our father said, go back and buy us a little food. But we said, we are not able to go down. If our youngest brother is with us, then we shall go down. For we are not able to see the man's face unless our youngest brother is with us. Then your servant, my father, said to us, you know that my wife bore me 2 sons. And the one went from me, and I said, truly he is torn to pieces, and I have not seen him since. And if you take this one from me too, and harm comes to him, you shall bring down my gray hairs with evil to Sheol. And now, if I come to your servant, my father, and the boy is not with us, since his own life is bound up in his life, then it shall be, when he sees that the boy is not with us, that he shall die. So your servant shall bring down the gray hairs of your servant our father with evil to Sheol. For your servant went guarantee for the boy to my father, saying, if I do not bring him back to you, then I shall be a sinner before my father forever. And now, please, let your servant remain instead of the boy as a slave to my master, and let the boy go up with his brothers. For how do I go up to my father if the boy is not with me, lest I see the evil that would come upon my father? 45. And Joseph was unable to restrain himself before those who stood by him. And he called out, have everyone go out from me. So no one stood with him while Joseph made himself known to his brothers. And he wept aloud, and the Mitzrayites and the house of Pharaoh heard it. And Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father still alive? But his brothers were unable to answer him, for they trembled before him. Then Joseph said to his brothers, please come near to me. And when they came near, he said, I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Mitzrayim. And now, do not be grieved, nor displeased with yourselves, because you sold me here, for Elohim sent me before you to preserve life. For 2 years now, the scarcity of food has been in the land, and there is still 5 years in which there is neither planting nor harvesting. And Elohim sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant in the earth, and to give life to you by a great escape. So then you did not send me here, but Elohim, and he has set me for a father to Pharaoh, and and master of all his house, and to be ruler throughout the land of Mitzrayim. Basically, he's saying, God sent me here so I could show Pharaoh what to do, so that all of us can survive. He sent me first, is what Joseph is trying to tell him. Chill out, guys. I'm not mad at you. God had a plan. Hurry and go up to my father, and say to him thus. Say to him, thus says your son Joseph, Elohim has made me master of all Mitzrayim. Come down to me. Do not delay. And you shall dwell in the land of Goshen, and be near to me. You and your children, and your children's children, your flocks and your herds, and all that you have. And I shall provide for you there, lest you and your household, and all that you have come to poverty, because 5 years of scarcity of food still to come. And look, your eyes, and the eyes of my brother Benjamin, see that it is my mouth that speaks to you. And you shall inform my father of all my esteem in Mitzrayim, and of all that you have seen. And you shall hurry, and bring my father down here. And he fell on his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept on his neck. And he kissed all his brothers and wept over them. And after that his brothers spoke with him. And the report of it was heard by the house of Pharaoh, saying, the brothers of Joseph have come, and it is good in the eye. It was good in the eyes of Pharaoh, and in the eyes of his servants. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, say to your brothers, do this: load your beasts and go. Enter the land of Canaan. Take your father and your households and come to me, and I give you the best land of Mitzrayim, and you eat the fat of the land. That is showing how appreciative the Pharaoh was of what Joseph did. He's giving the best pasture land, the best ground to Joseph and his family. It's just amazing that Pharaoh had that much esteem for Joseph. And you have been commanded to do this: take wagons out of the land of Mitzrayim for your little ones and your wives, and you shall bring your father and come. And do not be concerned about your goods, for the best of the land of Mitzrayim is yours. And the sons of Israel did so. And Joseph gave them wagons according to the mouth of Pharaoh, and he gave them food for the journey. And he gave to them each man changes of garments, but to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of garments. He's taking care of his whole family. Yes, he's giving more to his little brother, but he's taking care of his family. And he sent to his father this: 10 donkeys loaded with the best of Mitzrayim, and 10 female donkeys loaded with grain and bread and food for his father for the journey. So he sent his brothers away, and they left, and he said to them, do not quarrel along the way. He knew that they tended to fight, I guess. And they came, and they went up out of Mitzrayim, and came to the land of Canaan to Jacob their father. And they told him, saying, Joseph is still alive, and he is governor over all the land of Mitzrayim. And Jacob's heart ceased, for he did not believe them. But then they spoke to him the words which Joseph had spoke to them. And then he saw the wagons which Joseph had sent to transport him. The spirit of Jacob their father, revived. His heart raised. He was no longer sad. And Israel said, enough, my son Joseph is still alive. Let me go and see him before I die. Alright, we'll pick up with the story when we... next time. I thank you all for joining me today. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And as always, good luck and God bless.